For today's homily, I take my inspiration from the theme song of the movie Superman. You are probably familiar with that theme song that says, "Can you read my mind? Can you picture the things I am thinking of?" In today's gospel, Matthew tells us Jesus knew what they were thinking, meaning what the scribes were thinking in reaction to his healing of the paralytic. Does this mean that he had extraordinary powers to read the minds of people? Well, not necessarily. Mind reading need not be an extraordinary power. It can be a simple gift of perceptiveness or sensitivity to people's reactions. You see, in the gospel narrative, Jesus is dealing not just with physical paralysis. The fact that his first move was to pronounce forgiveness on the paralytic means that he knew somehow that what was preventing this man from being able to stand on his feet again was not just physical, but also spiritual. You see, sometimes people can be so afflicted by guilt over some past mistakes or failures, such that they are unable to move on with their lives. They project to God their inability to forgive themselves, and they end up living miserable lives. It is when we meet people like these that we get to realize the wisdom of the Church's sacrament of reconciliation. The connection between the spiritual and the physical causes of the disability is precisely what Jesus is trying to point out when he asks, alin ba sa dalawa ang mas madali? Which is easier, to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, rise and walk? The real proof that the man's sins had indeed been forgiven was if Jesus could make him rise and walk again. But there is yet another paralysis, which I think Jesus found more difficult to heal. The mental paralysis that was afflicting his detractors. After the paralytic was able to walk again, everyone who had witnessed it was awestruck, dumbfounded, except the scribes. What they saw was an act of blasphemy. What they saw was a violation of the law. It is hard to make people see grace at work when their minds are clouded with dogmatism and legalism. You show them a glass that is half full, what they see is a glass that is half empty. You show them a piece of donut, and what they see is the hole in the middle. This was the kind of mental atrophy that afflicted the self-righteous people in Jesus' times. People who were always quick to perceive the flaws and never the virtues of others. Well, sadly, we continue to deal with this kind of sickness or disease in society, and sometimes even within the church. We see it, for example, in the people who have made it their ultimate goal to bash or to character assassinate people who do not think or see things the way they do, people who disagree with their personal opinions or people who disagree with their political views. They seem to draw a lot of fulfillment by attacking and maligning through their vicious comments in the social media, not realizing that they are already behaving like mindless trolls. What I like very much about Jesus is that he does not allow these people to prevent him from carrying on with his mission anyway. And he teaches us, his disciples, how to do it. Namely, by training his disciples to develop the natural gift of perception, even of things that are not so obvious to many other people. Ano kaya nakita ni Jesus? What did he see when people brought to him a paralytic lying on a stretcher? Well, Matthew tells us he saw not just the man on a stretcher, but he saw the faith of the people who were carrying him and their earnestness about bringing him to Jesus. Jesus saw their faith. In the original version from the Gospel of Mark, we're told that they even went to the extent of opening up the roof. They tore down the roof because there was a big crowd of people gathered by the door and they couldn't enter. Talagang porsigido. Today, we are simply reminded that part of being a disciple of Jesus is learning to read minds, learning to read hearts and souls by looking at people with the eyes of love, mercy, and compassion.